It is 91 degrees outside, and we had a lot of rain over this last week, which has been phenomenal. And we're kind of just in the midst of summer now, where in the southeast we kind of get thunderstorms and rainstorms every couple of days. So I went ahead and harvested my onions because a lot of them were falling over anyway. I would not say it's been a great year for the onions. So beautiful onions, but tiny. Super tiny. And because I just don't have the space to cure these as great as I'd like to with all of the rain coming, I usually cure them on my front porch. And all that means is that you're letting everything dry out, really the stem right here. And when it's in the ground and this is falling over, like this one and most of these were, that means they're basically ready to come out. And so yeah, they were all falling over. Haven't grown to great size, but they're still gonna go to good use in our kitchen. Nothing gets wasted. And so what I'm gonna do now, rather than, like I said, trying to figure out how to cure them, I'm actually going to start cutting the onions. I'm just gonna, for example, I'm just gonna cut the onion right there. Use my fingers to clean it up a bit, shove it in the basket, and then for any of the onions that have really good greens, some really good green tops, I'm going to save some of those greens and use them as well. So what I'm going to do is freeze dry all these onions. I'm going to try to get them in one batch. It could be two, but I'm going to slice some. I'm going to dice some, freeze dry them, and then freeze dry some of the really good looking greens and pulverize the greens into a powder, but leave the sliced and diced onions as is, so I can throw them into whatever recipe I need, depending upon the chop of the onion. So I'm just cleaning them up and doing what I can out here so that I don't have to bring any extra dirt in the house. So inevitably the question comes up, why was my garlic and onion harvest this year so lackluster? And the best I can come up with is two reasons: inconsistent watering, and lack of health soil, or not enough soil health, right? Bulbing, I was gonna say foods, plants like garlic and onions and even other flower bulbs, they're heavy feeders, right? And so you need to make sure that your soil is properly loaded with the right nutrients. And I don't think I do a very good job of fertilizing the right types of fertilizers or at the right time. I just don't have the mental capacity yet to figure that out. And also, I probably just need to add more amendments to my garden back here for better health overall in the future. So I've grown both onions and no, I have not grown garlic at our homestead property. I've only ever grown garlic here, and I have had really good success in the past. So this is probably my first kind of bum year. But I've grown onions now at the homestead property and here. And I would actually say last year at the homestead property, I had a lot better success. So I am definitely going to kind of think and ponder and research really about what I can do better for the next garlic and onion planting. I'm just taking the greens that look really healthy and are actually pretty firm, not the really, really floppy ones, and putting them in the basket as well because they are the ones I'm going to freeze dry. 2023 onion harvest in the books.
Put it in the fridge.
The main thing. I'm going to get this.
You must go to your room too.
A big elephant. Harvest the big elephant. You're the MVP.
Okay, so I've got 1 tray of the tops, 2 trays diced, 1 tray sliced, and I still have plenty of onions left. We're back getting our onion harvest put away. So obviously they're done out of the freeze dryer, and I am just scooping, I'm starting with the chopped diced ones into my Marlar bag here. They froze, and remember I did not put them in frozen, they went in fresh. I mean, I couldn't have been any more fresh, literally right from the garden, washed and chopped. So that's kind of exciting, knowing that these are going to remain perfectly fresh in their freeze-dried state as long as they are properly stored for a very long time. So I'm excited about that. But they froze in the freeze dryer for 6 hours. The vacuum pump ran for only 10 minutes. It only took about 10 minutes to get the moisture out. And then it dried for about 32 or 33 hours. I had it drying. It probably was dry before that, but I had it go that long because I like to make sure that when it's done and when I know it's dry, it's not at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? I mean, the machine will keep going, but it will beep. It'll beep every 10 seconds or so just to kind of alert you that the cycle is done. So I always try to time it so that it's not doing that at, you know, an inconvenient time. And so it's the morning, I just got my kids off to school, and I'm just getting this done before I start my day. But that way it went a little bit longer because it worked for me to process this now. So I've got my onions, at least the chopped and the sliced, in my Mylar bags, and then I've put an oxygen absorber in each one. And we're gonna vacuum seal, or no, excuse me, not vacuum, but we're gonna seal it, heat seal it shut. And that'll be good for a very long time. Harvest Right says that when the food is stored, processed properly in the freeze dryer, stored properly in a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber, not exposed to, you know, obviously moisture, heat, light, then the food should last up to 25 years. It's really insane to think about because I certainly don't think about storing food for 25 years. But if we don't have a very good garden harvest with onions in 5 years, right? I've got some onions that we can at least use for cooking. And also even just to take camping to do things with, to make meals, or when we go on vacations, kind of makes things a little bit more easier too. So the onion powder, or the onion top powder, is processed. Came out really well. I just plan on adding this to whatever, soup, stews, casseroles, whatever I can add it to, and just add a little flavor. It smells good. It doesn't, I mean, it smells oniony, but it smells more fresh. Is that possible? I don't know how to say that. It smells good. It's a little different. I'm going to enjoy playing around with that. Okay, so that covers a majority of the onions we harvested. I still have a basket left. And I have something planned for these that I've never done, which is caramelized onions. I've seen people do this where they caramelize the onions in a crock pot or some sort of, you know, slow cooker, and with some butter, salt, and pepper, and really let them cook down for maybe 24 hours, and then can them up in small jars and pressure can them at, for me, 10 pounds of pressure for anywhere between 70 to 75 minutes. So that is what I am going to attempt with these. It just goes to show that even when you have a really disappointing kind of small harvest, it can be utilized still in many ways. So I finally got all the onions chopped, every last onion from the garden, and I decided to chop them manually rather than do the food processor like I did with the freeze-dried ones, because I've really wanted to make sure for the caramelized onions that they were as uniform as possible. It was a little bit more tedious, but it wasn't that bad. So I'm gonna put about, I'm gonna say 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter. I have my crock pot on low. This is gonna go all night. I'm gonna add some butter, some salt and pepper, and then tomorrow we'll come back and it should be really reduced and caramelized. I don't even know how many jars I have. If it's not enough jars to pressure can, then I absolutely will just freeze them. Folks, our onions are caramelized. It's been about a full 24 hours. Remember, I started them on low in the crock pot. Before I went to bed, I actually put it on warm. I just didn't want it to burn overnight or have any problems when I woke up. So I had it on warm overnight, and then this morning I put it back on low. And they smell so good. I could smell it last night while I was in bed. It just smells amazing. So I don't have enough to really can, right? But what I am gonna do is put this in my jars, let the jars cool on the counter, and I'm gonna freeze it. So this is something you can do at home and not have to worry about canning anything, right? You can easily do this for the freezer. So I'm doing 1/4 pint and 1/2 pint jars because I envision using this as a topping on steaks, burgers, or even the starting of some French onion soup. So I'm just gonna ladle the onions into my jars. Now there's a lot of air pockets here, but I'm gonna get the jars filled, and then I'm just gonna kind of maybe bang them on the counter a bit with a towel underneath. Use a chopstick, whatever I need to do just to get some of these air pockets out. That was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. And so I've got 2 half pints. Well, yeah, 2 half pints. This is I think a half pint, but it's only filled about halfway. So then 3/4 pints. So not enough to, like I said, can. And I need to stress, because I think it's important to note that this is what would be considered a rebel canning recipe. That is not a tested, I don't want to say it's not safe, because it just means it's not a tested recipe to pressure can caramelized onions in this way. Because right, all we did was the onions, butter, salt, and pepper. You could certainly add more herbs and spices if you wanted to. Thyme, I think, would be really good. But it's not something that's already been tested. And so it's considered a rebel canning recipe in which people go ahead and do things even though it's not tested. I'm going to advise that if you are brand new to canning, or just getting into it, maybe you've only been doing it for a couple of years, stick with those tried and true safe recipes. And for something like this, just throw it in the freezer. I am so glad my onion harvest is processed, because more things are going to be coming from the garden, and to have this one thing done and last us for many different uses in multiple ways for many months, maybe years, such a relief. Such a good feeling to have that done. Thank you for joining me. I hope this inspired you to think of different ways to preserve the harvest, even if the harvest is a little, aww, it's still worthwhile. Take care, stay healthy, stay well. Bye-bye.